Hi, my name is John, and welcome to another edition of Statistics Quest. I'm going to talk today about the streak that Amy Schneider is on, Jeopardy. As of yesterday morning, I believe she had won 34 games in a row. Quite an impressive streak. Still a good bit behind Ken Jennings, who I believe had 74. But I want to look at how impressive her streak is and discuss actually three types of probabilities. I have a little red dot here. I'm not sure if you can see it as the viewer, but I'm going to put that on. Right now it's under the word probabilities. But anyway, and then we'll look at a few examples related to this streak. So the three types of probabilities I'm going to quickly go over because that's germane to some probabilities we'll look at here in a second. One type is called theoretical. That's basically, it's based on theory. So for example, a coin flip. If you have two possibilities, right, heads or tails, and you want to look at the probability of a head, that's one way that it can happen. There's only one way you can get ahead, and that's namely to get ahead, and there's two possible ways, then we would say the probability of getting a head or a tail is 1 out of 2. Similarly, for a dice roll, you may talk about the probability of getting an even number. Well, how many even numbers are there? There's 3, 2, 4, and 6. How many total numbers are there on a die? There's 6. So what's the probability of getting an even number? It's 3 out of 6. We could reduce that to 1/2. That's theoretical. Another type is called relative frequency. That's where you base it on empirical data. So for example, if you are at a bus stop, or let's say you start taking a bus and you've taken it for 20 days and the bus has been on time 19 times, and you're wondering what's the probability that on any given day the bus is going to be on time, you'd say, well, 19 out of 20. That's what I have based on relative frequency on my empirical data. The third type is called subjective, or we might call that instinct or gut feel or something to that effect. And that's where you just you're winging it, just based on whatever. You might be watching a football game and a friend asks you, what do you think the chances are that the Steelers win this game? Say, 60%. What are you basing that on? Just some tangible things, but some gut feel. That's called subjective. So 3 basic types of probability, and we'll get into in a second why that's relevant. I do want to briefly mention, though, interestingly enough, there's kind of an additional one, you might say, and it's been thrust into the sports world and industry in the last several years in particular. It's called Bayes' theorem. Bayes' theorem has actually been around for a couple hundred years. Again, it's kind of gaining steam in more recent years, but Bayes' theorem would update a probability. And so it doesn't quite fit into the 3 that I talked about. It's very related to relative frequency. And what I mean by that is, getting back to relative frequency, let's just say you are at the bus stop. Again, you've gone 20 times, and let's say that all 20 times it has been on time. And you wonder, well, what's the probability that it is going to be on time? You probably wouldn't say, well, 100% of the time it's been on time, so I'm going to say it has a 100% chance of being on time. That doesn't intuitively make sense. You might put it somewhere in the 90s. But anyway, Bayes' theorem would start with a certain established probability and then update based on empirical evidence. I mean, that's beyond the scope of this topic, but I wanted to briefly discuss that. But for the most part, there are 3 types of probabilities. Okay. So let's say that Amy is about to play her first Jeopardy match. I think it was a couple months ago she started. And maybe you're hosting Jeopardy and you're wondering, what's the chance that she's going to win 34 matches in a row? Not knowing anything about her, basically, you think, well, she's as smart as anybody else, but, she's of equal ability to anybody. So you think, well, the chance that she wins this particular first match is 1 out of 3, right? And this would be theoretical in this case. Actually, theoretical, real quickly, I got to mention, is sometimes called equally likely outcomes. And in this case, you'd say, well, okay, we got 3 contestants. There's only one Amy. And if you assume they're equally likely to win, you would say 1 out of 3. Okay? Well, to win 34 matches in a row, again assuming equally likely outcomes, what would you do? You'd multiply 1 over 3 actually as a factor 34 times. I didn't write it all out here. I put ... So there's 34 1/3 to the 34th chance is this very, very small number. Wow, that's very rare. However, it doesn't seem reasonable to put her in the equally likely category, especially after she reels off several wins in a row. So at a certain point, you might update your probabilities. And in fact, we could get into Bayes' theorem in that case, but we're not going to. So for the rest of this, we're actually going to use that third type of probability that I looked at, and that's intuitive, or again, sometimes called gut feel. So at a certain point, you say, man, she is really good. So, whether it's after 20 wins or 25 wins or whatever, let's say after 34 wins, you say, well, okay, let's look back and see how impressive that was. It seems unreasonable to say that she had a 1 out of 3 chance of winning any particular match. And it also seems unreasonable to say that she had a 100% chance of winning any particular match, even though we do know in retrospect she won all of those matches. But you might just kind of speculate, well, what if she had a 90% chance of winning any particular match in those first 34? What would the probability then have been of winning her first 34 matches? That's real easy. It would just be 9/10 or 90% to the 34th power. That's still pretty rare. That's approximately 3%. Now, we often use probabilities, actually, probably more likely to use them going forward. So we now might speculate, okay, what is the chance that she wins 41 more matches consecutive to break Ken Jennings' record, which is 74, right? So 41 more would be 75. And we're going to attach a probability there. I said, well, you know what? Again, we're using intuition. We're going to assume 90%, and we're going to raise it to the 41st power. And in that case, it is actually obviously going to be less than 3%, and in fact, it's about 1.3%, still pretty rare. Now, you can play around with these numbers. Some people might think, you know what, I think she's better than 90%. Again, it's kind of gut filled. Nobody's right here. Nobody's wrong. One person might say 95. One person might say 88. I'm going to go over just one more example. Intuitively, boy, 34 in a row, that's really impressive. I don't know what it is. I'm going to throw out one scenario. Maybe it's 97%. What if it is 97%? Well, then we would take 0.97 to the 41st power. That's approximately 29%. If it is 97% for any given match, you know what? She's got a shot to break Ken Jennings' record. Anyway, I hope you liked this episode of Statistics Quest. Please feel free to subscribe if you have not already. Also, like or comment here, and I'll do my best to get back to you. But see you next time on Statistics Quest. Thank you.